Right. Welcome to the Alternative Acoustic Podcast. I'm Chris of the Chris Woods Groove Orchestra, and this podcast is brought to you by Ibanez UK. Now, my guest this time is Buzz Gravelle, best known as a fretless guitarist. Now, I'm recording the intro to this episode far from the comforts of my home studio, deep into the west coast of Ireland. Very, very rural and, frankly, inspirational part of the world to sit and be. And actually, a really inspirational place to sit and edit a podcast. Not that I particularly did much editing, because the things that Buzz had to say were all deeply inspirational. And in fact, a lot of our conversation focuses around just that, inspiration. The reason why I've come to this part of the world, the reason why we pick up the guitar, sometimes the reason that we don't pick up the guitar too when we're lacking in that thing. We're lacking in inspiration to do something. Now, in this conversation, Buzz doesn't just talk about fretless guitar. Fretless guitar is kind of the vehicle in which he uses to take us to some inspiring places, which I think will feed your need to pick up the instrument and to access your creativity. We talk about creativity a lot. We talk about putting up creative barriers which can often help us to access creativity. We talk about safe guitar playing and contrasting that with courageous guitar playing and having the courage to screw up. Buzz gives us an insight into the Overtone series and how that can apply to fretless guitar and actually fretted guitar. And we start off our conversation in a kind of unexpected place, although it makes perfect sense listening back now. We talk about social media and the spectacle of guitar playing, how that's actually influencing the music that people are making, the sort of the smoke and mirrors of social media. It's a really exciting and inspiring conversation that I really loved having, and I think you're going to love listening to. Now, if this is your first time listening, or actually if you've listened to all the previous episodes, please give us a follow or drop a comment or share the podcast with other people. We've really had an incredible launch for our first few episodes, and it really depends on you guys spreading the word if you enjoy it. Now, if you head to chriswoodsgroove.co.uk/The Alternative Acoustic Podcast, join our mailing list, and between now and December 2025, we'll be choosing a email at random to offer a fantastic, very, very beautiful Ibanez acoustic guitar. And also, one last thing, if you want to head over to my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Chris Woods Groove, you'll find a whole host of video lessons on acoustic guitar playing. And over the coming weeks, many of which will be inspired by these fantastic conversations. Thank you so much for listening. But yeah, man, starting off with that conversation about in a world where everything is, you just don't know whether it's real or not, I think is a fascinating place to start anyway, isn't it?
It is a fascinating place, and if you've been part of the guitar community, which you are, you see that there's little dramas that emerge online with people faking videos and things like that. But to me, it's a natural consequence of the entire ecosystem of what people have to do to get noticed in 2025. This is the water we all swim in, fortunately and unfortunately. And I say that because it has treated me in many ways very well. This ecosystem of what we should basically say is social media being the main platform of which people get noticed and listened to. As we all know, if you don't exist on social media, unfortunately, it's almost like you don't exist, especially if you're a small independent artist. And creating music or content for social media is a completely different thing than creating full form music videos or other prepared material, because it's supposed to come off as intimate, unprepared. This is what people want. They want, that they're in the same room with you, right? And you're just doing these amazing things. But of course, smoke and mirrors is what so much of it is about. So the pressure, of course, is for people to create this sense of authenticity through artificial means. And so it tends to be a game of smoke and mirrors, right? To get that attention from the other 10,000 guitar players or musicians out there, hawking their notes. Listen to me before you scroll to the next one. So it's a really tough thing. And I say that it's both positive and negative, because I've been playing music for 45 years, and it's really only been in the last 7 or 8 years, primarily through this, that I have reached a worldwide audience and fan base, and I have social media to thank for that. So I guess I am a critic of social media, but I'm also someone who realizes that it was a game changer in terms of spreading awareness and visibility for what I like to do. So,
do you think part of that is the element of the visual? Like you just point for the audio podcast listeners, you just pointed at a guitar with no frets. Like what is that?
It's like if you want someone to listen to you, no one's going to listen to this. But if you do this, they'll listen. So no, there is that. There's the visual spectacle that it's, as they say in social media marketing, it's the hook. So there's something that stops you and goes, oh my gosh, look at that. That looks completely different than I'm used to. Now, of course, what I've tried to do is make sure, hey, okay, once you stop and look, the music's good enough. But anyone who doesn't admit that is kind of just fooling themselves. And I think it's been the same thing for other acoustic guitarists that are of a similar ilk. For example, the whole microtonal guitar community has really grown in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years because of, in part, social media. Because you hold up a guitar and you got crazy ziggy frets and movable frets and all the rest of that. Now, I've known one of the kind of godfathers of microtonal guitar, John Schneider. He's a longtime LA resident, lives about 3 or 4 miles away from me. And he's been doing this since the 1970s. But he's not on social media. But as soon as it gets on social media, people stop and look at it. And a certain percentage of those people are going to get turned on to the music, and it helps spread awareness. So that's that double-edged sword about social media, which is we can be a critic and say, oh, it's just visual. It's just this. True. But if it gets people to stop, you've potentially gained a fan, gained a convert, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, man. I think it's fair to say for the percussive acoustic guitar thing, I mean, not so much Instagram as such because it blew up through YouTube, really. But I think it's fair to say that there is no way on earth that it would have been so popular without that visual. And because it was there before, Preston Reed.
I agree.
And then,
I agree.
Wow. What's that guy doing? The Alternative Acoustic Podcast is proudly supported by Ibanez UK. Now, the Ibanez V Series has long stood for high quality at seriously affordable prices, available in all kinds of finishes, shapes and sizes. Now, I got to try all of them out recently, and a particular favourite of mine was the incredible Mini, which is the perfect travel size guitar. I mean, it sounds way bigger than it looks. The entire V Series and all Ibanez guitars are available now at Gear for Music, so make sure you go and check them out.
Sure, I agree. Because I guess we could say one of the OGs of the whole percussive guitar would be someone from the 80s like Michael Hedges. And I was a fan of Michael Hedges, and I saw him live. I remember 86 or something, him and Leo Kottke. And it was amazing, but at that time, it was his albums on Windham Hill. No videos, none of that stuff. And he wasn't. He was doing some alternative stuff, and obviously the harp guitar, but he wasn't doing nearly what you see. As you know, if you know the genre, the percussiveness and whatnot. I'm just such a fan of Michael Hedges' music. Plus, he was a Mendocino resident, and that's Northern California, and I have a soft spot in my heart for that area of California. But soon as it became part of the video culture, people like to see that. People like spectacle. I mean, this is human nature. We're not going to stop this, right? We like spectacle. We like something crazy like this. You want to see someone do something in some weird environment, anything that makes you stop and go, wow. For good and bad. Because we all, as guitar critics, we're the worst, listeners. It's like how many guitarists does it take to change a light bulb? 1 to do it, 99 to say, I can't believe you've, sold yourself out and you're doing it that way. So, of course, anyone who starts to take it over the top a little bit, and I won't mention names, but we all know that there are certain percussive players that are just over the top, and most people feel like, oh, that's too much spectacle. That's a natural consequence of the fact that people like to see what they see. It's an uneasy balance, I guess. There's never, I guess there's a sweet spot, right? And I try to hit that sweet spot. I am fully aware that people stop because there's no frets right here. And it's visually striking, as are people who are playing in alternative manners. If you can make that visually striking, you can stop. Hopefully, though, you have the quality of music that people listen to it outside of social media.
I mean, and with the fretless, every note sounds different anyway, doesn't it? I don't mean every note that you play. I'm not implying, Buzz, that everything you play is out of tune. But do you know what I mean? Like every time you play a C, man, it's just slightly different. But I mean that it's just got this amazing, beautiful quality to it.
Well, this is part of the other thing why I like fretless. I feel at heart I'm a contrarian. And only someone like me with that attitude would kind of be attracted to something like this. Because the first thing you got to learn is to unlearn. And that's why I tell people the people who are best at fretless are those that have not invested too much time in traditional techniques. Because all of a sudden, you've got to change your techniques completely different. I mean, everything from the vibrato, the way the hand hits, and everything from difficulty is how many fingers you have on the fingerboard at a time. So a chord, that requires 3 fingers, like a C chord, which is easy on, obviously on a standard guitar, can be very difficult to play in tune. So people go, oh, well, that stinks. No, it's an opportunity to reevaluate your approach to guitar. So every time you hit a roadblock, you go, oh, I guess I can't do that. And then you're going to take a right turn. But that's okay, because if I want to strum C chords, I'll strum it on a fretted guitar. It sounds great, right? But if I want to conceive of how the guitar is, I have to forget technique. I have to forget conceptualization. I have to kind of redesign it from the ground up. The good news is I have all the muscle memory of the left hand and right hand, so that's the same. But the whole thought process is completely different. Things that are hard are easy. Things that are easy are hard, and people don't know which is which. So you just have to jump in and figure all of these things out, which there's 2 types of guitar players. One that goes, oh my God, that sounds horrible. I don't want that. And the other one that says, oh my God, that sounds fantastic. There's no limits. I want that. So obviously you can see the one that I fell into.
How exciting. Relearning stuff. That
it
sounds
is
good.
exciting. Yeah, because I'll tell you why I did it, why I'm interested. I'll just tell you my journey if I can be so indulgent about it.
Do it.
Because no one taught me how to play this. No one said, oh, this is how it goes. But I went to it because it was a refuge. It was a place that no one told me how it works. I have studied classical guitar. I studied up through my doctoral level classical guitar performance. I did the whole thing, the whole rigorous training, the practicing, the Bach, and all that stuff. I love it. But, there's a lot of pedagogy and a lot of tradition, and there's a lot of all of that sort of stuff. When you're in school and you're studying, 15
Was
works.
that your first access to music then actually through classical? So you learned
No.
the guitar through notation or
Absolutely not, and this is why it works. I started out playing rock guitar back in the '80s. It was Van Halen. It was Led
I
Zeppelin.
got
It
that
was things
vibe
like-
from you. I wasn't willing to accept that you were like completely. No offense to any classical guitarists out there, but I just thought, nah, man, no.
Yeah.
He likes a 12
No.
bar.
It was Eddie Van Halen. But no, it was all the '80s kind of. In the '80s, the whole guitar virtuoso thing kind of blew up because of that sort of thing. And I was one of them. Brandy Rhoads was another one, and I was also very eclectic. So I was taking jazz lessons and trying my best to play jazz. But even though I'm not a professional jazz player, I feel very comfortable improvising. And that's what it taught me, which is, and composing. So anyways, I have all this stuff. And then I wanted to study music at school at UCLA nearby. And they had to study classical guitar. So I said, I better learn classical guitar. And, I went to at the time, the sheet music store, bought the Bach Chaconne, which is like one of the hardest damn things ever to play on classical guitar, and because I didn't know the difference, and worked my tail off on it and auditioned. I'm glad I don't remember how it sounded. But then I studied classical guitar, and I put down my electric guitar for 9 years. And I just did that. But I had the chops. When I was in high school, I was studying sweep picking and Francombali and Vai and Satriani and all the shredders, all that sort of stuff, right? And so I was way into it. Put it down, went straight into classical guitar for 9 years, got into modern composition. One of my professor's mentors really was a friend. He was very much older when I was in school. He was in his 80s, but he was a friend of Stravinsky, Arnold Schoenberg. He wrote modernist music. He was in Los Angeles after World War II when all of the art community came over, the music community, classical community came over to LA, or during World War II, right? They said, go to America. And they said, well, where do you go? They said, well, LA has a film industry and the weather's nice. So many people came to LA, and he was part of this kind of art community. Anyway, so he got me into composing music, right? And
like
it
far out sort of contemporary.
12 tone, absolutely, absolutely, atonal, all that sort of stuff. It almost with like a punk rock attitude, right?
Okay.
Like F the authority. This is our punk rock. It was great because he was about 80 years old, but he had this incredible musically rebellious streak. So I was kind of mixing this pot of all these different elements. Like part of me, loved Jimmy Page. Part of me loved Arnold Schoenberg. Part of me loved, Miles Davis and John Coltrane and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was composing and I was writing this stuff. Anyways, I get out of school. This was probably now about 16 years ago. I'm teaching, I'm doing all this stuff, but I run across on Craigslist. I don't know if you remember Craigslist. This was, back in the day before Facebook Marketplace. This was when everyone would be selling stuff. And I was looking for used guitar gear. It was always nearby stuff. And something popped up, a fretless guitar about 2 miles away. It's real cheap too, $50. And I was like, well, I might go get that. I have no idea. I've never seen that. I've never heard of this. I don't even know what the hell this is. What is this? I know there's a fretless electric bass, and I know about like Jaco Pastorius and all that stuff. And of course, the upright bass is fretless. And I didn't know it, so I went there, and it turned out to be some Turkish guy, which now makes sense. But I didn't know. And he says, no, it's a thing in Turkey. And listen to Cenk Erdogan and Erkan Or. And I was like, okay, I wrote their names down. And I got home and I listened to them on YouTube, and I was fascinated. But I got home and I actually was in this room. Actually, I got home. This is my teaching studio. I remember I bought the thing at like 10 p.m. and I was so fascinated by this guitar, which was very cheaply made, but the fretless conversion was great. And I played this until like 3 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And I'm so confused. How does this work? And I loved it. Then for about 7 years, whenever I felt burned out and too boxed in, I would just kind of practice the fretless and just compose on it. And I always looked at it like, can I write some music on this thing? But I called it my incubation period. It wasn't for anyone, it was just me. Okay. Until finally I had a friend say, Buzz, you should put this stuff on Instagram because it's kind of cool. And I was like, really? You think people be into this? He's like, yeah. Boom. I did it. And then people started just liking it and following it and seeing it and all that stuff. Completely not planned. Completely just kind of fell into it. Until I found, oh, God, this is a thing that I am starting to unofficially be a leading member of. I did not know this. You know what I mean? This is, I thought, was just me in my studio here practicing and doing my thing. And then, people from around the world like it. And this is one of the great things about fretless guitar. It's a chameleon. People hear it for what they want to hear. Meaning, if you're from the Middle East, you hear the oud. And you hear echoes of the oud. If you're from the Far East, let's say China, you hear the Chinese guqin. If you're Indian, you hear the sarod or the sitar. Sometimes people say, oh, it sounds like slide guitar too, right? And so because of that, it has an international fan base. I remember when I first was posting, it was like my most followers were Istanbul or Tehran. And I was like, I didn't expect this. And I have always also had a very world music interest. When I was studying music, I was studying music of the Indonesian gamelan. I studied sitar a little bit. I studied the Japanese koto. And so I just did all this because, well, it was fun. I'm into this. So when all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can use this to understand different musical traditions. Then it became something where this is a unlimited potential, right? So I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a trajectory. I didn't have a clear vision. I was just stumbling upon this as it happens. But then I just became obsessed, and I would play every day, hours and hours and hours, and wrote music for it. And that's how I learned how to play it. I would just write music, right? Again and again and again. Oh, hold on. Someone is here. 1 second.
It's okay.
Yes?
I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. Just want to say, there's some kind of homeless drug person not far from here that when I walked past, she was just like, "Go fuck yourself, bitch."
Is it
She's like,
is it dangerous because I'm in a podcast right
oh,
now?
no, it's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna close my door. Okay, I'll take care of that.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
If she moves closer to the school when people come, it's not fun.
Okay.
Wow, man.
Sorry about that. That was
Can I have permission to leave that in the podcast for a little taste of LA life?
I was going to say. This is LA. So anyways, yeah, that was one of my piano and voice teacher. And so there you go.
Are you okay there? Are you all right to carry on? You sure this all makes sense?
Oh yeah. This is LA. So it's part of the environment.
Wow. Okay.
There you go.
How exciting. Well, exciting from thousands of miles away, maybe not when you're in it.
That's a whole different podcast to talk about LA's homeless problem. So anyways.
Yeah, man. So you said it helped you access or understand, I think maybe you said.
Yes.
Which I find really interesting. I'm really excited by all of that stuff. Is it the saz? The Turkish?
The saz, yeah, the saz. That's a Turkish instrument that has a non-12 tone equal temperament.
And he's got, and I saw some like sort of tapping techniques as well with that.
Yeah.
But go on.
I was going to say, this is, again, what's nice about social media is that we can just see all of this stuff. If this was in the 80s or 90s, you can't see all of this sort of stuff. And then musicians who are playing their instruments in a traditional manner see everyone else, too. And then so they start doing things like tapping. So it's a two-way street. So as much as, we, as earlier, we talk about people just relying too much on spectacle, it's a fantastic world we live in. I remember being at UCLA as a freshman and thinking, okay, I'm interested in Indonesian music. And I had to go to this like microfilm thing and have someone show me in this like basement of this library to listen to some field recordings of all this sort of stuff. And now it's just YouTube, whatever. And I think that's so fantastic. And so if I want to learn about these traditional musics, I have all the resources in front of me. So that, I mean, in the end, fretless guitar keeps me inspired musically. We all know this, that the problem that anyone, I guess the monster that lurks behind everyone's musical career is burnout. What if I get burned out? Well, there's only one reason I feel get burned out is because we lose the inspiration. We lose the passion. For me, I need to constantly have something where I go, gosh, that would be cool to explore. Wouldn't that be cool to try? And so fretless guitar is all of a sudden that for me. It's limitless. I feel like as I look more into it, I see more things to explore. And so I look at it like, oh, this is like a legacy thing of what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, I could do this my entire life. Now people come to me and I have 16 years under my belt, and that's great, but I'm happy for other people to bring, their experiences and what they're doing into the fold, right? So hopefully it continues, knock on wood, after I'm gone, that 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years from now, it just continues to build, and it kind of builds this almost more international ability to incorporate elements from around the world. It's really kind of a global instrument that way. So that's what I'm hoping for.
So for me, Buzz, I went through a stage with guitar where I started to sort of, become maybe burnt out or just lose the love. I think I was detaching from the instrument, and I started tuning it differently and in a way that I didn't know what I was doing. So I wasn't like looking up dadgad and then learning up all the chords. I just didn't know what I was doing. And that's changed my life, and that's why we're here having that. Go on.
Okay, this is exactly the same thing that I was doing. Your impulse and my impulse were exactly the same. And I have a theory about this. It's called we need to put creative barriers. In order to access creativity, we need barriers, which sounds counterintuitive. So if we know our way around something too much, it's too easy to fall into well-worn patterns. If we're walking paths that are the same path we walk, we do it just unknowingly, right? Yeah. So by retuning your instrument, all of a sudden your fingers are putting in different places. You have different sounds. You have different opportunities for voicings of chords. And of course, you have different things you can't do because, well, that doesn't work anymore. And this requires you to think about those alternative creative ways to think. That fires our creative thinking, right? We have to do that. And it's not just you, me, or any other guitar player. This is something I actually researched. And there's a great quote by Igor Stravinsky who says, if you tell me to just write something, I'm paralyzed by all the choices that I can do. I can write anything. But if I say, okay, you're going to, write a 12-tone fugue with these instruments based on this and this, all of a sudden he's put in these creative barriers that allows his creativity to flourish. So we want all the freedom in the world. The ironic thing is we only can have complete freedom if we do something in our mind that limits that freedom. There's another example that writers sometimes use. And it's the same concept where we have to put in creative barriers. So there's an exercise where a teacher might say, okay, for a creative writing class, you're going to write a short story, let's say 3 pages. But you got to pick a letter of the alphabet. Any letter, let's say it's N. And you can't use that letter. Just can't use it. So you have your story, and of course what that means is you can't use the words that you want to use. You can't use those connecting, and it changes everything because it's an artificial creative barrier. Now, you can pick anything you want to be your artificial creative barrier, and that's what it is, and that's what allows the creativity to flourish. Because you may say a phrase, describe something, touch on an emotion that normally you wouldn't if you had access to that letter. The same thing with our music. You may play a phrase, voice a chord, write some music that normally you wouldn't if you had access to the standard ways of doing it that you were assured. We have to be in a spot where we're not quite confident enough, right? I sometimes use the analogy, if you're in a pool, you don't want to be in the shallow end at your ankles because you're bored. There's nothing there. You don't want to be stinking down by the diving board. You want to be right here where you have to keep your head above water, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm safe, but I have to do that. So this is also why if you've ever seen a band that you feel like's just going through the motions and they're just doing it again and again and again, we can kind of enjoy it from a nostalgic point of view, but it's not the same thing. It's like an artificial recreation of the joy of the original because they're not in that spot. They're in the shallow end playing their hits, and yeah, they're going to make money and all the rest of that. But where's the really exciting musicians? The ones where they're there too. They're trying new things. They're doing things. Then it's magic, right? So I've thought a lot about this concept right there, and it's very interesting that you mentioned that because it's the exact same thing. Along those lines, as I have here on my guitar, I will also retune my guitar to alternate tunings. So it'll be fretless, but then I'm also, okay, I like alternate tunings. As a matter of fact, 90% of the time I'm using alternate tunings because whether your guitar has frets or mine doesn't have frets, I like the same thing that alternate tunings provide, that opportunity for new voicings and all the rest. So I'm even adding another creative barrier to it.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I love that creative barrier thing and the giving yourself restrictions. No, that the blank page syndrome, that sort of, there's a, what, I gotta fill it. Well, actually just put your pencil in the middle. Or I've used the analogy for the tuning thing of walking to work. And if you walk to work the same way every day, you'll see the same people, you'll see the same things, you'll disconnect, you'll always arrive on time, but you'll always arrive at the same place. If you choose a different route, you're going to take a hell of a lot longer to get there. But you're going to have these surprises. I mean, it depends on what neighborhood you're in, but maybe you'll be like, actually, I'm going to go the same way. But it's that whole it taking longer to get there. I think for me as a guitarist, there had to be a bit of surrendering to the fact that if I was at a jam night, I couldn't get up and play my series of flashy Jimi Hendrix licks that I had learnt from guitar magazines anymore. I couldn't instantly impress. But the trade was, I might find something amazing, but I'm going to hit some bum notes on the way.
Absolutely. That's the same thing where you have to be in that spot right here. If you're always going to know you're going to be playing the same blues licks over and over, you're assured that they're going to go well because you've already done them. But there's something that you're not gaining from the experience when you're done because it was a safe experience. Now, of course, that's a courageous thing that you have to do. It takes courage. And unfortunately, especially for newer musicians where they don't have the courage to screw up. And especially now where it's like you screw up and it's on video and everyone's, oh, yeah, you screwed up. But you have to have the courage to kind of screw up and do that. So that's really important. And regarding your example of walking to work, it's the same psychology I say that like why traveling to a new city is so fascinating, right? So if you come to a new city you've never seen before, you see this with kind of the awe of a first-time visitor. But if maybe someone's hosting you who lives there, they're like, well, this is my city. But it's contagious because then the person who lives there goes, wow, this is exciting. Yeah, I guess you're right. There's things I don't notice because I live amongst it, right? Or another way to say it is, fish don't know they swim in water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's great. It's the same thing. So we have to pull ourselves out of our routines and pull ourselves out of the safety zone. But easier said than done. I guess for me, I was like, okay, I've gotten to a certain place of my standard guitar playing. I felt safe enough emotionally, like I could do this, right? It's like, if I screwed up, I screwed up. Big deal.
So yeah, do you think you probably wouldn't have gone there if you didn't know? Even just people know, yeah, this guy can play guitar. Like, it's all right. If you sounded a bit off on the fretless, it's okay, because...
Yeah, I think there was that. I think another thing that I've realized as we get older, too, is validation is a hell of a drug. And that's what
I eat it for breakfast, man. That's literally, that's why I get up in the morning.
So, we do all these things for validation, and then, if you want to take a chance where you don't feel like it's going to receive the same validation, you censor yourself, right? You self-censor. So that's that's an interesting thing. So you have to be kind of assured of yourself. And also the problem with fretless is it is intimidating for people because it strikes fear in the kind of unspoken fear spot of most guitar players, which is their musicianship. Most guitar players feel like their musicianship isn't up to par. It's kind of this lurking sort of like self-doubt we have, my ears aren't as good as it could be, and all this sort of stuff. And with fretless, it's pretty unforgiving. When you're playing a note out of tune, it's out of tune. So it's not like most guitar players, they have facility and all that sort of stuff. But with fretless, it doesn't really matter how fast or slow you play. If you're out of tune, you're out of tune. So you really have to work on your ear training. Now, again, you can phrase that or look at that as an opportunity. That's an opportunity to work on your ears. It's a fantastic opportunity to work on your ears. But it means you're going to have, some learning curve going into it.
How has that changed your fretted guitar playing? And even because you were talking about like you doing vibrato differently, you were showing me there. I guess you're going side to side. What's the sort of difference? And
it's more when you're doing this, it's from the wrist like this. Okay. Because obviously for electric, you're going up and down like that, right? Which is going from the pitch sharp. Doesn't matter if you're pulling the string up or down. But even on a classical, you're pulling the string, right? You're pulling and releasing. Whereas on a fretless, you're literally gliding. So the amount of pressure that your hand is using is so much different. And so my hand has to be incredibly loose, right? Which is interesting because people often say, do you have to apply more pressure on the fretless? And the answer is no, you apply a lot less. Because if my hand is tight like a standard guitar, I get this neurotic sort of sound, but now that wasn't flashy.
It was beautiful,
it was
mate.
Human, right? It was human because of that, because of the vibrato. And you notice my hand had to be like this the entire time, even on chords, like that. Now you can't really do this on a standard guitar. It's subtle, but the reason I say that is because you got two strings that are open strings. They're standard. You got the bass, or I should say the bass, and you got the treble up here, and they're both warbling their own vibrato. So you get this kind of standard guitar, but not standard, right?
It's so. I'm going to use the word visceral, hoping that I'm using it correctly, but it feels. it just feels really connected, man. It feels even just that tiny little example. I feel like it's immediately dialed in, and watching is interesting because it feels more like there's some guitarists that I adore watching, particularly because they seem to have some kind of movement and fluidity to their movement,
Right.
and that. Yeah, you're saying this wrist is rolling, and
you have to do that, and it's hard because we tend to be tense, really tense with that left hand, and you have to do it. Now, here's why I think it's also something that connects people, and really at odds with the trends of music today, because it's so human and so vocal. And there's little imperceptions and pitches and sliding. It's like the anti-auto-tune, right? You're not fixing everything because it's not on a grid, right? Everything's kind of fluid and flowing around, right? And, even small things. Like, so if I wanted... So I got D, A, F sharp. I'm tuning that F sharp to the overtone series. And you might be like, that's no big deal. But there's a sense of rest, a sense of...
Let's not skip over you saying I'm tuning it to the overtone series. Let's
Okay.
explain, because the people who are listening will be a whole range of different types of players and appreciators of music. Maybe what the overtone series is and how you're sort of doing that even, and how you're picking within that. Could you explain that down a little?
Okay, so as you know, this is a huge topic. We could, have a whole, PhD thesis on this. But to keep it simple, for those people who don't know even the basics, any note, any pitch is going to consist of a fundamental note and a series of higher pitches within that called overtones, right? And they are prescribed by interval. The first overtone is an octave above the standard pitch. We know that because that's what a harmonic is. If this is a D, the string length 50 is a D octave, and so on. We have all these overtones, okay? And, there's all these tuning systems, and our tuning system of equal temperament, of taking an octave and dividing it into 12 equal segments where each note is exact distance from the other note, technically 100 cents from the other note, has some wonderful things that it allows, but it doesn't align with the natural overtones always. So one of the overtones, which is an octave and a third above, is actually flatter than what we have when we tune our guitar. So basically what that means is, the short answer is, the guitar as a tempered instrument, as is the piano, is always slightly out of tune. But it's a sacrifice people have made because they've been like, okay, well, we can transpose, we can move keys, we can do whatever, and most people aren't going to notice. Now, fretless instruments can, in places where you want, make those small adjustments to, quote, get it in tune. And even if a listener can't say, oh, okay, look, that was 14 cents, flat right there or sharp right there, they can feel it. It's a visceral thing, right? You can feel when things are in tune. So this isn't like this only can be done on fretless guitar. String players do this all the time. If you're playing in a string quartet and you're playing a chord, let's say you're the violist and you're playing the third of the chord, you may flatten it a little bit to tune it up. If you're, a trombone player playing in a horn ensemble, if you're a singer in a barbershop quartet, these are all the instruments that allow those micro adjustments. You don't have that on standard guitar. You really can't unless you tune the string, but then you screw up the relationships of everything else. So on fretless, you can, right? Now, in reality, it depends on context and whatnot. But
this is a really exciting thing to talk about, man, because it's sort of, you obviously know a hell of a lot about it, and you're in that world. And funnily enough, I have another podcast called the Music Education Podcast, and I did an episode with Adam Ironside, who is our link, because he knows a lot about, and we did a whole episode just talking about this. And it does go so deep, and I think just that hearing, what? Like standard instruments are just out of tune? Who is this guy? He's crazy. He's lying. He's a conspiracy theorist. But I think what they're talking about in a very relatable way, in that sense of a lot of your favourite records weren't tuned to a tuner. And the guitarist went, oh yeah, that B string's got to change because when I'm playing in the key of A major, I need that. I always find that with like, if I have a piece of music where I go between A, D, C, D.
Yes.
And that B can't be tuned to it. I have to switch it, and I even have to bend it slightly to make it work. And so people do experience it, don't they? In all kinds of non sort of far out music. It's just
the most commercial music. You know, one of the great things, I'm sure you've talked about this, is that first Van Halen record. Is Eddie Van Halen used to do that on his strings. You get these fourth power chords and these thirds, these chords with the root third and fifth, and that third would be like really in tune with tons of distortion, and that was the same thing. Turn that little string down. For that song. And it sounds great. It feels great. So the thing is this, I find that these discussions are both fascinating from an intellectual level, but they also intimidate a lot of people because they go, oh my gosh, I don't know all this heavy duty theory. So I always tell people that in the end, people make these changes because it just feels good and it sounds good. Right, it's almost like it's the vibrational frequencies are in sync, and it just is good, and that's what you're looking for. And so when people are doing this on the fly, they're just listening and trying to make it sound good. So again, it's all about working on your ears, because some people, honestly, everyone hears things differently. Some people are like, I can't hear it, and I'm like, that's fine, but a lot of people can hear it, and as you work on your ears and you hear it, first of all, you gain pleasure when you can do it, and secondly, when you hear it and it's not done right, it causes you a little bit of annoyance, just a bit like, oh, okay, I got to deal with that. But that's the beauty of discovery of all this sort of stuff, right? And that's exactly why any musician who through the ages, when you say, oh, so and so did this, so did this, I don't think it was like they had to pull out a thesis. They just were like, oh, that note sounds a little bit sour to me, man. Let me fix it.
Yeah. Okay. It's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that.
It's kind of wrong. Make it kind of
better. Exactly. So but the problem is people are thinking, okay, we got to go 7 cents on this. We got to go 3 cents on. No, just make it sound good. And same thing when you're playing with other players. If I'm playing with a standard fretted guitar, I'm just going to tune my notes to make it sound good. I'm sure I could analyze like everything that's going on, but as musicians, we don't want to be in that headspace. We want to be in the kind of more emotional headspace. And I'm always like, well, how does it feel? How does that make me feel? And I don't care how correct or incorrect it is. If it doesn't make me feel the way that is interesting to me, I'm not going to care about it. But these little micro adjustments do. And they can kind of drive you crazy after a while, because it's like anything else. You go deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And so there's no end of, until you get to like Jacob Collier level ears, where he's hearing, 1 cent differences. But still, it's a fun thing to explore on fretless guitar. It is really, but it falls into that realm of musicianship and hearing. And I think all guitar players, 95% of guitar players can benefit from working on their ears, because most of us don't. I say your ears are kind of the ceiling of your skills. If you don't play enough, you're not going to reach the ceiling. But if you play a lot, you're going to confront that ceiling. And so you raise that ceiling, it's just going to make you a better player.
How do you think a beginner, intermediate acoustic guitarist, and beyond, any acoustic guitarist can work, as in, someone working with frets, develop that ear in that way and start to hear things like, even just that idea of hearing overtones and understanding the sort of resonance between notes in a way that isn't just articulating and saying, well, that's the first, that's the fifth. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Well, I do have advice, and again, it's completely contrarian, and people kind of even like roll their eyes because of this advice. But I've been giving this advice since 30, 40 years, which is, and this is going to sound really naive. Listen, like really listen, and what that means is figure out how to play music from the recording. Don't go to your tab sites. Don't go to the tutorials. Listen to the damn recording 300 times. Because when you do that, you're picking up the nuance that you're not going to get from the other way of learning. Is it slower? Yeah, it's 1,000 times slower. Of course people do this because you want to learn a new song, you want to learn it fast. But it's the best way, and it has always been the best way to work on your ears, is to listen. Now, I could even go further and say, transcribe, listen to people's solos and write them down and all that sort of stuff. But this is old school sort of stuff. When I was in high school, I had a jazz teacher who said, write down, notate some Benny Goodman clarinet solos. And I was like, damn, that's hard. But I remember listening to the damn Benny Goodman clarinet solos for like 100 times until I got it. And it felt such pleasure. But not only is it pitch, it's rhythm, it's articulation, it's tone, it's emotion, it's all of these small little things where you're just zeroing in on all of this stuff. Now, for the guitar world, probably one of the greatest virtuosos of the last 50 years, Steve Vai, he rose, if you know his backstory, playing with Frank Zappa, rose to fame as an 18-year-old. But more importantly, he transcribed all of a large portion of Frank Zappa's guitar solos by hand. So, and he presented them to Frank Zappa, who was kind of blown away by them, but he was too young to join the band. So he said, wait and come back when you're 18. So he was blown away because here's some 16-year-old kid sitting obsessively learning these guitar solos. And believe me, that played a part of Steve Vai's musicianship. Now, of course, he had to play for hours and hours a day to get to chops. But as we know from Steve Vai, he's got ears too. And that is what helped him create having his ears. That's the sort of thing. I don't know if anyone today would do such a masochistic thing as, transcribing 200 pages of Frank Zappa guitar solos. But boy, oh boy, that's how you do it. That's just the good old, it's hard work. Hard work. You just listen. If you're a jazz guitar player, go back and listen to Wes Montgomery. Listen to how he did his thing. Go back to Django Reinhardt. Go back to all these people. Transcribe that Pat Metheny solo you want, and you'll hear his phrasing. You'll hear the way he slides and his vibrato, and compare that. And again, this is the upside and downside of the modern world. To tie this where we said back to social media, where we said, oh, this is, such spectacle and it's people just, smoke and mirrors and faking stuff. But on the other hand, it's worldwide exposure and things are happening now that never could have happened before. It's the same thing with learning music. The old school was, hey, that's all you could do. You had no other choice. You had to go and copy and learn from the recording. Now it's like you have every resource at your fingertip. It's both good and both bad. And maybe because I'm getting older, I think that's my philosophy of the world. It's getting both better and worse simultaneously.
What a perfect place to stop. Thank you so much, Buzz.
Okay.
Thank you so much to Ibanez UK for making this podcast conversation a reality and helping inspiration reach guitarists.